God doesn't mind prosperity as long as it is shared.
This is Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion, politics and art.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berlinblau of Georgetown University, and you're watching Faith Complex. Joining us today is the Reverend Jim Wallis, a person I'm sure many of you know. Reverend Wallis is the founder and editor-in-chief of Sojourners magazine. He's the author of many books about faith and politics, including the forthcoming Rediscovering Values on Wall Street, Main Street, and your street. It's good to have you here, Reverend Wallis.
Great to be here.
Fantastic. Let's start with an issue that is very much on everyone's mind these days. Executive CEO compensation and the damage that it wreaks on the American psyche. I'm going to quote you here. From 1995 to 2005, the average CEO pay increased 5 times faster than the average workers. That is a sin of biblical proportions. Tell us about that.
God doesn't mind prosperity as long as it is shared. So maybe 30 years ago, the ratio was 30 to 1, CEOs to average worker. Now it's, Business Week says 415 to 1. Well, does anybody think this is a good thing? It's a bad morality play. You've got the Dow goes to 10,000. Unemployment now has gone to 10%. And with the money that we use as a safety net for the richest people, they bought stocks and securities, made a killing, and now they're giving these big bonuses to their executives. This just makes people angry, and it is a sin. This is just wrong. People are sacrificing, and they're suffering, and they're paying a heavy price. And we fixed it for those on Wall Street. We took care of them. We gave them a safety net. Now I've been working on issues of poverty for years, and they don't want to give the poor a safety net, because you know what? They'll take advantage of it.
Let me ask you this question. President Obama once said, I remember listening to this speech and being very impressed by this line. This is America. We don't disparage wealth. We don't begrudge anybody for achieving success. And we believe success should be rewarded. I'm wondering if you begrudge wealth. Do you begrudge wealth?
In God's economy, there are 2 principles. There is enough if we share it. Both are important. As I said before, God doesn't mind prosperity as long as it is shared. These great chasms and gulfs are really ripping apart our sense of who we are as a society. And I think that's what makes God angry. Wealth is good if it is shared. But when we have such a gap between bottom and top, that's what creates the problems.
But some of these folks on Wall Street, and this is going to be kind of a strange claim that I'm going to make, some of them are extraordinarily philanthropically minded. I mean, the amount of money that they give to children's hospitals, to institutions of higher education, I certainly wouldn't be that generous. Now, I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit with you, but what would God say about that? What would God say about the person who's extraordinarily successful but seeks to return it, to some degree, to the community?
Well, I was with Bill and Melinda Gates last week here in D.C. I was with the head of their foundation yesterday in Detroit. Now, Bill Gates has given now about half of his wealth. He's going to give almost all of it for global health. I think God smiles at Bill and Melinda Gates. So there's a real difference between those who are like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, who are really showing a kind of generosity that very few others show. There's a difference in that, and those who accumulate these toys, you know, the big dog cars, the big yachts, the big houses, there's a real kind of conspicuous consumption.
Well, he has a $147 million home, or so I've been told, so that doesn't necessarily in any way neutralize all the good work that he does. So one can be very wealthy and consume conspicuously and do good for others. Can we concur on that?
All of our lives have a trajectory. And so the trajectory of Bill Gates' life is to give away more and more of his wealth on behalf of things like global health. And then, as you last week in Washington, D.C., call upon the rest of us and the government to do the same, to invest in global health. Now, what he defines as enough, that's between him and his family and his God. And you know what? Those are fair questions for Bill Gates. They are. And for me and for you too.
Is it the government's job to listen to the good Reverend Wallis, the right Reverend Wallis? Do you think a government has a moral obligation to listen to what you just said and do something about it?
No, King never said, because you're a Judeo-Christian nation, you've got to do what the religious leaders say. He never said that. He said, I'm going to build a movement of people of faith and others that talks about the common good. We got to win the argument democratically. You got to win the battle. You got to win the debate about what's best for all of us. So you don't say, because I'm a Christian, you got to do what I say. No, religion must be disciplined by democracy. I want to build social movements that make change. Washington, D.C. is wired to block change. These Wall Street tycoons are now spending, I think, $230 billion so far $230 million to keep us from having financial regulation of them 1 year after their behavior caused this crisis. So, no, you don't get to win because you're religious, but you have to build social movements that have a moral imperative that call people to them, whether they're religious or not, to say this is not what democracy ought to be.